can you see this person's perspective, but can you see beyond this barrier that is in front of you right now? And we do get to that place of gratitude and actually appreciation. Now, it takes us refusing to stay in a victim mindset in order to do that.
Hello, beautiful peoples that are joining us on all our portals, from Transcending Turbulence to the Devon O'Day page to Plain Jane Wisdom, and across the portals, even on our Main Street Today page. We meet here every Wednesday. Lunchtime.
Every Wednesday. That's right.
Every Wednesday. Lunch date, launch date.
That's right. That's right.
Heavy lifting for a lighter spirit. And Lord, don't we need one of those, Teri Pugh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. How are you today?
I'm good. Everybody's talking. Everybody's talking about it.
Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah. Depression has taken a front row seat in the conversation. It has been around forever, but people have been shoving it in a closet, and now they can't because it's on it's on the news channels now. People talking about depression and what that leads to and what that looks like. And we're talking about community grieving as the heading for the show. And you called me about that one. You sent that one to me. And what was in your mind when you sent me that topic?
Well, I sent it because if we address quickly the elephant in the room, this past week we lost someone here in the country music industry, and everybody's talking about it, and it's triggering for people, and people don't know how to handle their triggers, and it is definitely an example of what is called compound or community or communal grief. When someone, examples, war, someone a public figure passes away, 9/11, natural disasters, they are losses that happen that are triggering, and they affect communities like across the board. So further than, definitely not to surpass or trump a family's grieving or something of that nature, but they affect other people who feel a connection. And oftentimes we don't recognize just how monumental those triggers can be. I can't believe I named off all those things and I didn't mention COVID.
Oh,
right. It's another one of those things. So
we've been isolated. Sure. And I think that's where a lot of it starts, is the isolation and getting us away from. That's when our brain starts telling us things that aren't true, but they're true for us. And that's huge. We've got a lot of people joining us right now. Elizabeth is with us. Hey, Elizabeth. Hey, Suzanne and Mark down in Alabama. Leslie. And Joyce. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Joyce.
Don Strickland. I have not. Don, I think, have you been on our show with us one time? And glad to have you back.
Absolutely.
Elizabeth starts with, it is real.
It's real. It's real. And I do want to say today, I know that Devon and I don't often talk about our shows, hardly ever. Like most of the time I log on and go, what are we talking about today? But this was one that warrants, it is heavy. So it, not that we're diving off a lot of high dives today, but it is something that will require us to give a trigger warning that, we'll be talking about all sorts of different things today. And even though it may not be something that is, might seem triggering, just saying something like, surviving a natural disaster for our folks around here that live in Waverly, that can be triggering because it can take you back to that place. So I just want to be mindful that all you lovely humans who are listening today, if you find yourself feeling a little jolted by anything that we say, take time for yourself just to sort of mute us, step away, take care of you first.
Absolutely. And we try to give everybody a trigger warning if we're going to be talking about a subject like this. There are a lot of people, when suicide happens, it leaves a wake of survivors. And I mean, it decimates. It's like a tsunami that hits everybody, and it hurts everything in its path. There are emotions that are left: anger, uh, unsaid resentments, sadness, this grief. Why couldn't I have stopped them? Why wasn't I enough to stop them? There are all those kind of questions that come up. Let's discuss that, and about being a survivor of someone you love that takes their own life.
Well, first off, knowing that while there might be a lot of notions that we can do things to stop it, the best thing that can be done is getting support if they are open to that. And if they are not open to it, creating a space for you to stand in the truth that, and this sounds harsh, but you couldn't stop it. You know, there's not, we will self-blame, self-judge. We'll be incredibly cruel to ourselves because we feel like we should have been able to do something. And you're absolutely right to your point that it's a tsunami. It absolutely is, because it affects not only the individual, it affects family, it affects friends, it affects coworkers, it just ripples out, because it's the one thing that, whether people understand it, whether people judge it, whether people are completely just like oblivious to it, unless you have been in that space or you have training in that area, there's really no way. And this is not it's not that you're not good enough to know. You just can't. It's physically impossible to relate to it.
Elizabeth shares, there is nothing. I've been on both ends of suicide and suicide attempts. Right. And Elizabeth has shared some of the things. And let's talk a little bit about what it's like to be in that place where you feel there is no hope. And how do you reach out? I mean, if you love someone that you go, they're in a bad space, what do I do? Is there something that you can offer them? Is there something you can let them know? Let's talk in some solutions now. When we've got somebody in our family struggling with depression, is there anything that we can do?
Well, let's just expand that, and let's just say whether it's depression, whether it's chronic pain, whether it is mental illness, whether it is anxiety, whether it's unresolved loss. Like, it can be any number of those things. So right. the way to approach it is different for different people. But first and foremost, checking in with this person to see if there's any way that you can support them. You know, having if you have a loved one that you're concerned about, you have every right to call. To call and have a well check done so that they can go and check on an individual to make sure they're okay. Having open communication about how people are feeling, and first and foremost, normalizing the fact that mental illness is a real thing, and being overwhelmed is a real thing. And there's absolutely no shame, and there's absolutely it is a normal thing. The levels of it are very different, but if we could take away the masks of people who are all walking around like there's absolutely nothing wrong, we wouldn't have the addiction that we have. We wouldn't have the health crisis that we have. We wouldn't have, God knows, the pharmaceutical companies wouldn't be in the place they're in. I mean, like, we pretend because we need to be good, we need to be right, we need to be perfect and healthy, that nothing's wrong. We've got to talk about it. We've got to make it a normal, comfortable, as uncomfortable as it is, acceptable conversation to have, and not think that we are going to, read a book and be better, or say a prayer and be better. And I say that not knocking believers and when we pray about things, but we've got to be more boots on the ground with it.
We have to notice, and Mickey Bell, the comedian who was on Main Street Today yesterday, he said we've got to have these pastors and these people in churches, because he's a Christian comedian. He said we have to have them where they give good, nourishing answers, not just pray more. Or he said we've got to treat them, the people with depression, the same way we would treat the heavy tither who has cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's someone who knows the underbelly of that world. Let's just be real about it. If there's somebody who's a heavy tither with cancer, sometimes they get a better treatment from somebody and in a church setting, and that's not right. It's not right. It's not in all churches, but it can happen. So the bottom line is, pray more and just get over it are not the answers to ever give someone with depression. And it looks different from everywhere. Some people, they look dark, they look sad. Some people just look like they don't care about anything. Like all of a sudden, if something changes, and I'm going to tell you, have your accountability group in place.
Absolutely.
Because Teri will take one look at me and she'll let me pass 1 week and go, okay, I'm going to let this one pass. But if it's 2 weeks in a row where I look like I don't care, you say something.
Well, I'm obligated to say something, because when we spot it, when we see it, we at that point are obligated. We know, and it's not because I don't love you to pieces. I do. But we are obligated when we know that someone is a little off from their normal. And the other part to that is when people are really on. We can have people who are, they are bells and whistles and here I am and woohoo, and they can be struggling just as much as anyone else with the anxieties, the suicidal ideation, the depression. That's one of the things that we don't, the other diagnosables, the cancers and the MSs and those diagnosables that cause the chronic pain, because they are more recognized and they're more socially acceptable.
Right.
We tend to give more weight to, oh gosh, well, I feel sorry for that person. I feel bad for that person. Can I help in any way? But mental illness takes people right out of their comfort zone. I mean, it'll slap you with a wet willy right out of your comfort zone. And you're just like, God, I don't know what to do. And it's okay not to know what to do, but don't do nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Joyce, you share your stories, and God bless you for sharing the way that you have.
Absolutely.
You always bless our conversation so much. My mother was a manic depressive for many years, and I always worried about her taking her life. She had 2 different nervous breakdowns and was hospitalized both times. And yes, it does affect the family so much. I've seen my father in tears as they've taken my mother away in an ambulance due to mental breakdown. I think it's been in the back of my mind always. Oh, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, do I have it? Will this happen to me? That eats away at a lot of people too when a parent does this.
Or if you've lived with this and experienced it most of your life with a parent, there's always because we get, talk about our littles, the first time that you recognize that something is not quite healthy, our littles are imprinted at that point. And so we can worry ourselves sick our entire life that we're going to lose someone, and it does go, when Joy says, it's never far from thought, it's not far from thought, because you never know,
That's right.
And here's the other thing that I tell people often is when a loved one is in a place where they end their life by suicide, that is not a reflection of how much they loved you. It's not. It feels very personal. Absolutely it does. But it is not a reflection, because they have gotten to a place where many, many people, and again, to segue just a little bit outside of, suicide, but also depression, also addiction. It's not that someone loves something um, more than you. It's that sometimes they simply cannot be in that pain any longer.
Oof.
And the only way, even though we all know there are lots of options out there, right? There's medicine, there's support groups, there's rehabs and recoveries, and there's a lot of things, but that doesn't always feel attainable to people. It does not always feel attainable. So they're in a different space, and also different chemicals in the brain are pumping. It's not like one day everything is okay and the next day it's just not. It might be one day everything is okay and the next day they let you know that for all those weeks and days and years before that one day, they were sort of just coasting.
Yeah, and noticing how it affects you, and noticing when you're off may not always be possible, but listening to someone who does know you, pay attention to what they say. I mean, I paid attention when you pointed it out, and then another friend pointed it out, and by the time the third friend said, I was going to say something, and I'm going, well, I wish you would have. I wish you would have.
Absolutely.
Susan says, thank you. Huge advocate for being transparent about issues, regardless of what they may be. Communication and openness is helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Elizabeth, yes, we do. I've been thinking about that a lot this week. Those of us who've been there need to speak out if we are comfortable doing so.
Absolutely. Speaking out, if you're able to do that in a place that's non-threatening and non-triggering for you.
Right.
And also, from a community or communal standpoint, seeking out support groups, seeking out support that you need, whether that is through a friend or through multiple friends. Because many times we feel like, and again, I'm talking about collective or community grief, many times we're just lost with it. We talk about it, but we don't resolve it within ourselves. So
we've got a lot of triggers in the news right now. I mean, that,
absolutely.
the Johnny Depp Amber Heard court proceedings have gone on for years now. It seems like it's been a long time, and that's hugely triggering to me. And then Elizabeth talks about it was about me and the black hole that was a huge chasm inside of me. Yes. And Susan was saying people don't know what they don't see.
Absolutely.
And Tammy also joins us. Hi, Tammy. Hi, sister.
It is very, and first and foremost, I will say that, and I know we're bouncing back and forth between mental illness and, community grief, but if we can hold our tongues just a little bit when we find ourselves wanting to go, well, I just can't believe, or, here's what I think about, and having a little, not even a little, let's just be real, having some common sense and some grace around the fact that just because you personally are not experiencing something that has been life altering for someone else does not mean that it is not real for them. And just because you don't understand it, it's okay not to understand it. It's absolutely okay not to understand it. But what it's not okay to do is not to understand it and speak from ignorance. Not okay to do that.
Well, since Tammy joined me, Tammy's my prayer sister, and we pray together from time to time over the phone. Hello, my friend, listening and hearing this information. So,
yes.
Yeah. Angela joins us. Amen. It's giving us an amen. I want to talk about that too. When we are believers, when we are church going believers, if we're not church going and we're still believers, if we have this connection, depression, it doesn't mean we get a free pass. It can still find us. And as Mickey Bell talked about in his conversation yesterday. He said sometimes that's when the enemy turns up the heat and comes after you with all they can get. I mean, it comes against us, and our brain is a battlefield. Joyce Meyer's has a book called The Mind is a Battlefield. And it is a battlefield. And that's when that depression starts seeping in and has effect throughout, whether sometimes it doesn't look like sadness. And someone says, well, I've been sad. I never wanted to do that.
Right.
That is so hurtful. And if somehow, if you were going through this, it does not mean that you do not have extreme, incredible faith. It doesn't mean you don't have a great relationship with your Lord and Savior. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. It just means that there's something going on within you. You wouldn't go, well, I'm not a good enough Christian. I got cancer.
Right.
You never think that.
Let's just pull that veil all the way back. Mental illness has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with how good a person is or how shitty a person is in their own moments. It has nothing to do with that. Mental illness is a chemical imbalance in the brain. That's not somebody going, oh, I'm going to wave a wand and you're going to be blessed, or I'm going to really, put a dagger up your butt and you're going to have to suffer. It's not that at all. It's a chemical imbalance. We as a social construct of people, we need to normalize things and make things feel right or feel good or feel it has to make sense to us. And sometimes the only way we do that is by grabbing onto the things that we know and using them as using those points as jumping off points or catalysts to why we are the way we are.
Excuse me.
Mental illness, it runs in families. It can be, it can be from experience with PTSD or, complex PTSD, which is an extended PTSD, meaning one traumatic event or one or two traumatic events. Complex meaning a history or the rolling rock of trauma or neglect. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain because the brain wires itself and then it starts going into survival mode. But the very survival mode that it puts you in is one that will take you out sometimes.
Janet says, I lost my grandpa to suicide at a very young age, and I can remember the not understanding and always wondering why. I can remember my dad blaming himself. That's the first thing we do. So the wake of survivors gets hit with the wave of, I blame myself. I could have done more. And Elizabeth shares, this is beyond sad, at least for me. It wasn't sadness that made me pick up the pills or the razor blade. It was despair. It was absolutely seeing no other way out of the pain.
Right. And that's what it is. As a human vessel, our brains, our mind, our brain, we can only handle so much. That doesn't mean that we're weak. And also, I will say this, mental illness, and I know that there'll be some backlash for this, and guess what? You know me, I don't care. Mental illness has nothing to do with willpower. Suicidal ideation has nothing to do with willpower. People will often come to me and go, well, it's just willpower. You got to be strong. I'm like, what?
No.
Like, no, it's not. It's not. People who are addicted to sugar, it has nothing to do with willpower. It has to do with finding support, taking solution-based steps, proactive thinking. The problem with mental illness is when we're in that space, those chemicals aren't being dumped in our brain in order to let us do that. But we do have to take accountability. So if someone is struggling with depression or anxiety or suicidal ideation, if you're struggling and you choose to just go, well, I don't want to, I'm just going to lay here. So I'm going to sit here. I'm just going to be here. Then you're actively taking a step to stay stuck. There's not a judgment there. That's just accountability. I can't tell you how many people come to me and say, I can't move because of anxiety. And
Mm.
I'll say, and I don't diagnose or prescribe, but I'll say, have you ever considered talking to your primary care doctor about XYZ? And they'll say, well, I don't take any pills. I don't take pills for it. And I'm like, okay. So don't take pills. Maybe do yoga. Maybe meditate. There's a litany of other things that we can do.
I can tell you what not to do.
What, Devon?
Um,
Tell us what not to do.
you cannot fill that depression gap in your body with alcohol or pills
Mm-mm. Or
that
food,
numb you out, or see, I wasn't gonna say that, but yes, or food,
or sex, or porn, or smoking, or shopping, or girl, the list is long.
because when you are dealing with that disease, your body will tell you all sorts of things that you need that will make it feel better and will cure the problem. Alcohol is a depressant, except for a couple of them. Tequila's not, but it's weird. It's a depressant and a stimulant, so it makes
Mm-hmm.
you really crazy. So let's just discuss the fact that we will do those things, but it's just like having a lot of sugar. You get the sugar high, and then you get the sugar crash. So I will say that do not fill it with a substance or a destructive action, no matter how it makes you feel, because there is a repercussion to that.
Absolutely. And they all fall under self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
Self-harm is, we can self-harm on micro doses. We can
Mm-hmm.
have thoughts about ourselves in our head, God, I'm so stupid for this. That's self-harm on a micro dose. We can self-harm in a lot of different ways, but using something in order to feel better for a moment, just so that the shame, the guilt, the darkness comes back. So then we sink deeper and we kick ourselves and shame ourselves and resent ourselves more. And then we have to use more of whatever that is to shut that sound out. And it is a downhill slope. Like it is a slippery, slippery slope. And that,
Yes.
and that happens with, um, you know, community, bouncing back to, the community grieving, you know, when we're not aware of what to do, a lot of times we'll just say, well, it's okay. It's okay that it's okay. It's okay. Is it? Like, is it okay? It would not be okay for me if I knew that you just wanted to sit in a dark room and not get out of bed for 3 weeks. I might say, you know what, take what time you need to recharge. But if your butt's laying up in the bed with you hadn't been eating or sleeping or anything, I'm coming to your house. We're not doing this. And I understand you might be in a heavy, heavy place. I'm going to help shoulder that with you.
Mm.
I'm not going to try to save you, but I'm going to be there to sit by you and support you.
And I
Our
might put
job,
your butt in the shower.
girl, if you've been laying up in that bed for 3 or 4 days, your butt's going in the shower. Uh, ain't no might to that. But
Uh,
it's about also infusing when you can and when appropriate.
yeah.
We're going to have compassion there, but it's also about having a little bit of humor. It's about
Mm-hmm.
seeing ourselves as human beings and knowing that we're imperfectly perfect. And we need to stop judging ourselves by everybody else's imperfectly perfect.
Elizabeth says, no, it has zero to do with willpower. I tried filling that black hole in so many various addictions, jump from one addiction to another, looking for something to take the pain away.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being that honest. Susan, excellent discussion and comments. I got to run to go see my counselor. And we'll try to pick this back up later. God bless you, Susan. I love you so much. I'm an open book and have a huge toolbox to help my issues, but it took years. Thank you, ladies, for your truth. And thank you, Susan,
Thank
for
you,
yours.
Susan.
Angela, on that hamster wheel myself, EB. Yeah. Brenda says, I look for things that take the physical body pains away. It sucks when you get older. I feel so left out from friends. Feel like I don't fit in. Brenda,
Mm-hmm.
finding that is huge. That is huge. Not having a friend group. And I think about, and I'm talking out of school here, but I think about my mom, and I have huge sympathy for her because she's 84. She's buried everybody in her friend group. She's buried her husband. she's buried her sister and her sister-in-law. I mean, everybody in her friend support group is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so hard. That is so hard. And when we think that we're out and we're pushed out like that, it takes work to connect. It is hard to sometimes connect. But Brenda, thank you for being part of this. And Elizabeth, you're right. Brenda, you are so, so, so loved. Brenda, thank you for being in this group. Thank you for joining us on Wednesday. That's why we are faithful to this, is because,
Absolutely.
you know, and who knows, maybe we're going to have a whole group community thing, because now we started this in COVID, but
Mm-hmm.
we have started actually having events and some things. And who knows, maybe Brenda, you can go with us. I've got a group and I'm making plans to go to Ireland, April of 2023, taking a group. And I know Elizabeth is going. Might get Teri to go because
Might.
you ain't been to Ireland
I have
yet.
not
So
been to Ireland yet.
so
Yeah.
and so if you ever want to go with a group, and I've got some other travel things that I want to bring up, because we do some fun things we have before and we can again. That's the thing. And finding our community is a big part of it, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And not only finding our community, but also understanding you said something to me that I thought was, or you didn't say it to me, you said it to everybody, and I was eavesdropping. Um, when you said that your mom had outlived, all of her friends and her friend group and everything. And I find it interesting because while we do, as we continue to age, we do, if we're fortunate to live a long time, sometimes other folks in our circle aren't that fortunate. Um, and I would just ask everyone to be mindful that age is really a state of mind and a number. I have a neighbor that lives across the street from me, and she's probably 30 years older than me. Um, I check on her, I talk to her, I ask her if she needs anything from the store. I help her with some flowering sometimes. We don't have to be in the same age group to be friendly and compassionate and company to people.
Mm-hmm.
We can do that um, with any age. Just because we might not know the same music or agree on the
Right.
same whatevers, that's okay. That's okay. We can have people that are in different age groups. Um, and and it's lovely because think of all the stuff that you have to share and talk about. You've got two completely different um, life chapters
Mm-hmm.
that can just it's like a history thing, like for real.
Yeah. Elizabeth says we don't need to agree on everything to be friends. Amen. That's
Absolutely,
it.
absolutely.
Mark joined us. Mark,
Hey,
we've been
Mark,
missing you.
we
You got
have.
here on the tail end of things. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
And Leslie said she's interested in the Ireland trip. I will have a flyer ready not too long. I talked to Brenda Willis, who will be going from the Willis clan, and she is helping get all the flyers and stuff ready for that. So that's coming up in a little bit. And man, this has been a lively, wonderful discussion. We keep very sacred to our just around 30 minutes, which is where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you guys have anything that you want us to discuss in the coming weeks, we are here every Wednesday, noon-ish.
Noon-ish. I do want to say one thing before we wrap today. On the heels of the community, community and communal type grief. One thing that people can do, aside from finding support, um, you know, taking care of yourself, is cutting off your technology, because we can become oversaturated with, we're not going to miss out on anything. I guarantee you can cut on the news a week from today and you're still going to hear some of the same stuff. And if you really need to know, you can Google it because it's there
Mm-hmm.
forever. But if you continue to put yourself in that wave and you're not strong enough to to surf that wave is going to crush you every time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Every time.
so we've got to be mindful that, right now in this moment, maybe you don't have the bandwidth to stand in that wave. So reach out to one or two or, three friends or a support group, or we have a lot of people on our threads in our shows that they talk back and forth, and I know a few of them have become friends from this. So
it's crazy good. Yes.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Mhm.
So there's always options. There's always options.
And we encourage you to reach out to us, devonoday@gmail.com. Teri Pugh, tell them.
Yep. TeriPugh.com. I'd stop and think about it for a minute, and also one other thing, and I know we got to run, but I knew this was going to be a long in my head because my head's going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Also be cautious of toxic positivity, because there will be a lot of people that will say, and I'm all about it. I'm all about being positive, but I was drinking my coffee this morning, and it's a coffee cup that says there's always something to be grateful for. And I read that and I thought, you know what, that's true. And in that split second, I also had the thought come in and said, but that's not true for everyone. Not that people can't be grateful for things, but that sometimes you're in such a dark place, the lens is out of focus and you can't quite see it. So being gentle with yourself and staying away from people who are just, toxic positivity. That look on the bright side, it's going to be better. Get over it. Oh, you can do this. Oh, pray about it. Oh, it's okay. Oh, I've got it worse than you. Time out, sister. No, that is not helpful.
I love it here. Brenda mentions that her husband is not supportive. He's just that way. Wish it wasn't. And then immediately Janet says, Brenda, don't think you live far from me if you ever need to talk. That's what we're about.
There you go.
And Elizabeth, platitudes don't make the blackness disappear. No,
absolutely.
They don't. And that's what we're talking about. Well, we try to be as truthful as what we possibly can. And we just, we basically just throw our stuff right out there in the middle of the floor and play with it for 30 minutes.
That's right.
Mark says, I'm trying to seek help. And Mark, we encourage you to keep doing that. Centerstone is a great place. There is the Tennessee Department of Mental Health that has programs that are even cost effective for everyone.
Absolutely.
And so there are ways, and mainly you guys showed up here and you're having the conversation.
And it is truly, no matter what it is truly 1 day, 1 minute, 1 hour, and sometimes 1 second at a time. And it's getting to the next one. And I just encourage everyone to love their self to the best of their ability and stick around and stay healthy.
Yeah. Somebody needs you. And Elizabeth says every state has those programs, not just Tennessee.
Absolutely. And you know what? You can, and I get it. If you're in a dark place, even saying Google that is exhausting because your fingers weigh 7,000 pounds each. I get it. But there are, if you plug in, talk to text, there are oftentimes on Instagram, I will post a number of different support groups that are out there, but you're right, Elizabeth, they're in every state. There's a multitude of them. Sometimes there are even support groups on social media. I just caution people to, when you join a support group, maybe read through and sort of check and see if it feels good to you. Because some support groups, while they're well-intended, you can sort of get mired down in the muck, and you want to be in something that's not adding to the heaviness.
Yeah. I will say there is an anonymous fellowship that for a variety of different things. And the thing that I love about it, the bottom line is when your life has become unmanageable. And that's a group that is 1 hour, and you can do a 90 and 90 and it will change your life. It will change your life if you go and plug into that. And it's the cheapest therapy you can possibly get because it's people who've been in the same place that you have. So just encourage you guys to reach out for help. I'm Devon O'Day, and Teri Pugh's going to take us home.
Yes. Well, again, thank you all for joining us and for sharing with us and for being open and vulnerable and as yummy as you always are. We will see you next week. And next week, I believe our topic, we already have it on the table. It's about our recovery, actively recovering from a narcissistic relationship, because we have that guest already on the books. So unless that changes, that'll be what we're doing next week. And until then, create mindful moments that shift the scale in favor of a healthier day for yourself and increase the peace.